Well, hello everyone. You have right here, I'm talking about right here with logos right here. And I don't know if everybody has seen this right here, but this right here is supposed to be a sketch right here that I went and worked right here with a few classmates. And, this work right here was some of my work that I actually was working on from back in 2015. Whenever it came to understanding about, our skills and of course our ability to what we can learn and all that. But it's still, but you see right here that I put together right here, like I don't know if there's a particular name for it, but not really like a collage, but just knowing about it as to where if you were to go ahead and build like a maybe kind of like an infographic, but not really, but just something about that you have right here is the globe, the world right here. Like I have like a little globe, but symbol right here, and then talk about right here. Talk about for you want to impress the world right here. If you want to impress the world right here. So this right here is some of my work that I was looking at, and I remember working on this back those years ago, and like everybody else will say, is toward it, yeah, for being a graphic artist for sure, being a graphic designer, that you're going to have a few of your audiences that are going to be looking at your work, and they're going to be asking you questions. The person's going to be asking you about what this is and what that is. Even though if it's been nearly 5 years since you were working on it, and then you can see right here you got the layers right here, and you got the other tools right here where you can actually mask the layer and all that. But you have right here the channels right here. But still, it's like not everybody's really going to understand what all this means right here. You got the 3D layers right there, and talk about for layers, right? But not really. Not everybody's really going to understand what all this means right here. So it's like each time you do talk about it, and it's like almost all the time that somebody's going to be of course asking the questions and all that. But still, it's like number one that until that there is an example of a some sort of project or some sort of artwork right here, then maybe people are going to say is toward all I really see is a blank page, if anything. But you're going to go ahead and show somebody this right here, and of course, like everybody says, to where if you're not the designer, for sure, you're not going to understand what all this is right here. This right here, it looks like a few toon characters or something like that. But I'll go ahead and show everybody here that this right here is actually an example right here of a few classmates that I was actually painting, by the way. I was actually sketching these right here, and these right here are supposed to be classmates. So in case if anybody asks me that, yeah, this right here, that right there is supposed to be an example right there of, about 3 or 4 classmates that you were in class with, talking about something, and if it was talking about maybe a paper, a research paper, or something like that, or a project. And so it's like, yeah, so each time you think about going to these meetings a lot of times, especially these conference meetings and Zoom calls, that you're going to be talking to maybe 2 guests, and you're going to maybe be talking to the host, and then also to the presenter and all that. And so it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that, and you're warned to where that, yeah, that it's been 5 years since you were last working on this. So everybody's going to maybe want to know too that number one, that who are these people that you're sitting next, that you're standing next to, and all that. So it's like, so I was just thinking that the first thing I was thinking about was that yeah, not everybody's going to understand what this is right here, but still, I have right here talking about that you want to impress the world, that will develop a trusted relationship. Your research, and it's like everybody might even say is toward. I don't even really know what that means. What do you mean by your research? And so let's just say if it's been yeah, if it's been 5 years since you were working on something, and let's just say that part of what you were doing was that you actually were doing research on the internet. Like, yeah, in the library and on the internet about something. And what you were actually were doing is that you were actually talking to to somebody and talking about if you want to go ahead and look up this word and write a paper, and then so we can talk about that. So it's like, so every time I think about this, and I like 102 that, that while I was working on this, I was actually sketching out the details about the classmates, because a lot of times that while I was a student during the time, that a lot of teachers would say is toward it, that you don't really have to draw out the details all that in clarity about what all your classmates what the details about what they look like and describe from their picture ID or something like that. So I have right here talking about this right here is a painting of classmates right here. So if we can see this right here, that this right here, that like everybody says toward that you have this sketch right here of this person right here looking to the corner left right here, and then you have this one looking straight right here. So it's like I kept thinking this toward that if you were actually were to use this as a sketch right here, do you think that you would be toward it knowing about the fact that whenever it comes to understanding about is this right here supposed to be the daughter, exactly, do you think that who's this supposed to be right here? So it's like that so every time you think about that, then you're warned to where that if you were to actually be drawing the details right here of a few of your classmates, and let's just say that this is that's a student right there going to your school, but then that's her daughter right there, and then you have right here of one of her a roommate or something. So it's like so every time I look at this, and people want to know too, is to where that the first thing that you're going to be thinking about is that who are these people, and what does that really have anything to do with what do you think that the world wants to see and all that? But still, it's like if you want to impress the world, right? But still, that but while I was working on this, I was just thinking too that that the first thing that I would probably be thinking about for sure will be is to where if you're trying to reach out to a few of your classmates, for sure they're gonna be asking you, can you please follow me. Follow me on Instagram or follow me on Facebook so we can talk, about that. And so it's like, so each time I think about this, and I'm like 102 that, if you look real closely right here, that, this right here, that's me right there. I was drawing me as if I were going to be sitting right next to about maybe 3 other classmates right here. And somebody's going to maybe say, if I don't think anybody here has seen this, but that right there is a sketch right here that I was working on during the time. This was 5 years ago, and so I can remember working on this, and I can just remember that drawing in the details right here, and it was like that whenever you were in high school, by the way, that you actually you didn't have all that facial hair and all that, but like everybody says, to where you go ahead and paint a picture of you. But then you go ahead and paint in the details right there of the facial hair. So it's like, so every time everybody were to ask me that, why do you really, why do you spend so much time painting in all that facial hair, knowing is toward the back whenever you were in high school that you didn't really have, all that facial hair, but I had a little bit whenever I was in high school. But like everybody says, toward if you're going to go and paint your image right there, and people might say is to where, that you look at that right there, and somebody's going to say is to where, who are these people right here? Who's this lady right here? And so I tell everybody that that number one, that you're talking about midnight right here, but it's like everybody might say that whenever you do speak about Photoshop, by the way, it's like we're not just talking about photos. We're also talking about, how to make your illustration paintings a little bit more artistic. Trying to make them look a little bit more artistic, and like, how does that really approach your idea of being an artist and knowing about what it looks like on the World Wide Web and all. So like with me, that whenever I think about artwork, a lot of times, like everybody says, to where that yeah, that you try to make people look a little bit. I'm like, yeah. So these right here, this is illustration, my drawings right here. But like everybody might say that you spend quite a bit of time working on this and trying to make these children look like so yeah, so it's like these students right here, trying to make them look like actual students, right? And like cartoon characters and such, such and such. But really though, that whenever I was sketching these, actually, that I was actually talking about whenever you are in the classroom, that you're going to be interacting with a few of your classmates, right? And let's just say that whenever you do first start the conversation, that you're talking to maybe two students. You're talking to just for there for about maybe an hour. You're going to be talking to just one of them, and you're going to be talking to them maybe for an hour. And let's just say that you start talking to them, and let's just say that the first thing that they think about is that, well, I'm trying to figure out here, how to do that. I'm like, yeah, using how to be able to share some of your work, submit some of your work, on, in the online meeting room or something like, yeah, something like that. But still, that this right here is actually, these are the sketches I was working on right here. But like everybody might say, is toward, these right here are supposed to be sketches right here, but of course the original sketch right here for black and white, right? And so it's like every time you think about that and want to know too that maybe not everybody's really going to recognize it until that you put a little bit more artistic detail into it or whichever. But still, that I know with me though, that when I was working on this 5 years ago, I can just remember that it like whenever I scanned it in, and then you're working it in Photoshop, and it's like, yeah, so you were working on this, and it was like, yeah, not everybody's really going to know and understand what all this means right here. So like, let's just say that I go ahead and paint in right there, go ahead and select the purple, and then but still that not everybody's all these brush selection swabs and everything. Not everybody's really going to know what that is right there. So it's like everybody might even say too that but about the try to follow up with everything. But still that. But I don't know if everybody here has seen this, but still that this was something I was working on 5 years ago. But still, it's like you're talking about your classmates right here, and also. This right here is, your research right here. So if I were to select this right here, and then it would allow it to, like, talking about the 3D tools and everything, and for your research right here, and so if we see this right here, and just knowing that, if I were to select it, and then I can actually move that around and all that, if we can all see this right here. Your research, and so how many of us have really thought about that, to where if you're going to put the word your research in 3D model or something like that, that really, like everybody might say, is to where what exactly does it mean whenever you do tell somebody, your research or something like that. But it's like each time you do think about that, and 102 is toward it. Yeah, I know exactly what it means. It means is toward it, something that you were working on from earlier, and then somebody else found what you were working on, and so like research can be explained in a lot of ways, right? But it's like somebody might even tell me that something that you were working on from earlier. And want to know that, but it was provided on a paper, actually. It was provided on a document, but then, like everybody else would say, is to where if we're going to be having a meeting talking about stuff like that, And if you're talking about in person, like we had a meeting about that, but it was a virtual meeting. But then until you actually meet the person, in person, right? It's like everybody might say is toward it. That's usually the way it goes. Is that whenever somebody is able to see you and talk to you in person about something, then for sure it's like, But everybody might even say too that number one, you want to go and select the layer first in the paint, but still, I know with me though that when we're talking about working with Photoshop here, and at 1.0, yeah, you got the purple right here. Yeah, everybody, that want to make sure I select the color if I want to use brown, but anyway, but it's like, so it's like every time you think about that, and you're 102, that that was 5 years ago. Whenever you were working on the last time you were working on that, and at 102, that people want to say is, why are you asking me questions about something that I was working on 5 years ago? And that's maybe going to be the first approach that somebody's going to say, is that why are you asking me something that I was working on 5 years ago? And really, what is the best answer for that whenever it comes to understanding about design work? Like everybody might say, is that it's been 5 years. That was 5 years ago whenever I was working on that. And so it's like, so everybody might even want to know too that every time you do think about that, and you're warned toward it, it's been 5 years. It's been 5 years since you were working on that, and why is it that you just want to go ahead and ask the questions now? And so a lot of times it's like, so every time I think about that, and I actually found this sketch right here, in which I don't think everybody has seen this, but whenever I was working on this, I was just thinking too that you go ahead and show anybody that anybody who's want to know just a little bit, that they come across, that they find one of your designs, and they want to know too that it was 5 years ago whenever you were working on that. So I have right here that, I got this drawing right here, but if we can all see this right here, are the tools right here. I got the eyedropper tool, and then the slice select tool, and the perspective cropping tools right here, the Manipulacio tools. You would usually use that to make selections and all that, and then you have right here is the select object tool, and then the triangle tool right here, and then the paint bucket tool right here, the paint bucket and the gradient tool right here. So you would, the burn tool right here, and the dodge tool. So you would have these different selections of tools right here, along with the type tool right here, and the clone stamp tool right here. But I know usually I use the paintbrush, by the way, but it's like that whenever we're talking, even whenever we're working on with layers, right? And so it's like every time, I think about this, and it's like, you're thinking is toward, okay, that, whenever you first were working on this, and like everybody says, toward, you actually were trying to piece together enough information right here toward you had at least 3 or 4 other people looking at what you were doing first, right? Before you got into the basic details, but it's like, so it's like, so whenever I was working on this, I was thinking as to where that, that you want to impress the world, develop a trusted relationship. What exactly does that mean? Well, it's like have right here of talking about is toward, it's based on the fact about that, if it's freelancer work or if it's something that you were working on in class. So if you were actually doing your studying, right, and let's just say that somebody were to say is toward it, based on your research, that we came across some examples of your work, and we thought that we would like to talk to you more about that. And so even if it has been 5 years, and I can also write that up on the top here, is that Yeah, it's been 5 years. It's been 5 years since you were last working on that, and everybody might even say that that was 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago, and then 5 years later. So it's like, yeah. So I begin to learn that too. That if you do wind up getting if you do wind up getting a response, maybe like everybody says toward, yeah, we came across your resume on the job board, and we were just wondering toward it, yeah, something that you were working on, that was 5 years ago, and so everybody might even say is toward it, yeah, that every time you do think about that, and 102 that don't think of a resume as something to where it's going to expire at some point. Like everybody might even say that you don't need to think about that way toward anything that you were working on from earlier, right? Anything that you were working on from earlier, you don't need to think about that toward it. 5 years ago and 5 years later. Yeah, 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago whenever you were working on this. And so every time you do think about that, and you're warned toward it, how could you possibly remember all the details about what you were working on and what you were doing during the time, and what the purpose of this was for? And so that's why it seems like that yeah, that whenever you were first working on this, by the way, it was like not everybody is going to understand what that is, other than you just knowing about it, is toward it. Yeah, in case of anybody that may want to know too, that while you were working on something, that somebody else was looking at it, and they're like, okay, what does that mean? But it's like, so every time I think about this, and I'm like, 102 is toward it really, that, yeah, you go ahead and paint, you'll use the paintbrush here, by the way, just go ahead and paint, the world right there, and like 102, that, yeah, that while you were drawing those students, by the way, it was like, yeah, that's not what I look like. But I have right here, yeah, so this right here is supposed to be an example right here of like a puzzle piece right here. And people may want to know too that, so if you're going to be painting, yeah, a little sculpture right here of the world right here, and a 102 that, for any reason at all, that you would want to go ahead and do that. Like, if you want to go ahead and impress the world, right? And 102 that, yeah, what exactly does that mean? What do you mean by that? And like, well, really, that I mean by is to where, number one, develop a trusted relationship to where somebody else came across the work that you were doing, and they were very interested in it. And it's like, yeah, that they came across their attention, and but it's like, yeah, so I can just stay with the green right here for right now, but it's like I just start painting right here the details right here of this right here, and like everybody might even say that, yeah, you go ahead and start painting right here, and like everybody might say is toward, okay, yeah, that's real interesting right there. Just stay with the green right here, but then you go ahead and just make it lighter and darker values right here. Make it lighter and darker values. So yeah, so this right here is supposed to be there's something that represents the world, right? And it's like every time you think about that, and you're warned to where that yeah, anywhere you go in the world, for sure, that it seems like that somebody's gonna maybe say is toward it, yeah, that you know your your work, by the way, I'm like, yeah, that it's on the World Wide Web, by the way, but a lot of graphic work, graphic artists would even say too, is toward it, yeah, that every time you do think about graphic design, by the way, that somebody might even say is to where they always thought that it was just another way of promoting graphics mainly. It's not really about, looking at the world and knowing about if the world is looking back or something like that, but on the other hand, to develop a trusted relationship right here. To me, though, I'm like, everybody might even say that, maybe something like maybe scientists, like, maybe for cybersecurity or something like that, or anything about what you call dating sites or something like that, but it sure seems that way that, yeah, if you want to impress the world right here, develop a trusted relationship, your research right here. So I used your research, by the way, just knowing about is toward it, somebody was able to define something that you were working on from earlier. So it was like, yeah, you go ahead and draw right here as an example right here. I'm like, yeah, you draw the globe right here, but like everybody might even say too that you go ahead and from here, and then if you want to go ahead and like I was thinking, put the the year on the top or something like that. But like this drawing right here, I was actually working on this back in 2016, by the way. But it was like every time I do think about that, and everybody's maybe going to say is to where that whenever it comes to understanding about people might say is that you go ahead and color swatch right here and paint a little bit of details right there. But it's like, so every time I think about that and that your research and what exactly is research in general. And I say that it's basically information that you were working on that really approached at somebody else's interest, right? And that is why it seems like that every time I do think about that, for sure, that I'm gonna go ahead and try to guess. Guessing is not really the same thing as thinking or so, but still. But every time I think about that, I'm like, well, really, that like my teachers used to say too, this to where they gotta go by the requirements and all that, but still. But whenever I think about that, I think about it as to where while you were in the classroom, you were wanting to know too that what exactly is it that your classmates were thinking about when they were looking at the work that you were doing, that you were putting together. And I was like, while I was drawing, by the way, I was like, well, really, if you were to draw the details right there of your classmates, then, how do you think that you would actually draw them? And I want to know, too, is that, I just started, by the way, so I don't really know a whole lot about this and that, and so it's like, I can remember that, back in 2015, when I first started the online classes, by the way, I can remember that, a lot of shyness and everything, but it was like, that whenever you first were getting introduced to a lot of those learning materials and everything, it was like, that you talk to a lot of these classmates, and a lot of times, quite a few of them were like, anything that you want to talk about, but it's like, and I can tell everybody here, to be quite honest with everybody, that, I tried to impress the classmates with some of my work, but it did not always work. You want to impress a lot of your classmates with some of your work. It didn't always work until later on. Like everybody say, at least until graduation, right? So in case of anybody that may want to know too, that, it seems like that the only way that you would be able to impress anybody, if anything, is toward that you want to show anybody anything, and for sure that maybe at the graduation party or something like that. But still, it's like one way to be able to impress somebody would really is this toward that I would like to see some examples of what you've been working on, so that way I can get a better understanding of what you're doing. And So it sure seems that way that, looking at this right here, and want to know too that yeah, with a few of your classmates, and so I'm likely thinking this toward it. So I draw these sketches right here and color that in using Photoshop right here. But like everybody might even say is toward, yeah, that really, who are these people right here? They're sitting right next to you, and say, well, classmates. But the first thing that's really going to approach my mind really would be is toward, like everybody says, toward a yeah. If you were working on a paper or a resume, for sure, that the first thing that you're going to say is that was 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, come on. Really, what's your point whenever you say 5 years ago? That was 5 years ago, and so it's like, yeah, so I know everybody is maybe going to say that to where that, if you were working on something, if it's been 5 years later, and want to know too that could you explain a little bit about what this is and what that is right there, and but I'm like, it's been 5 years, and people are going to say is toward, yeah, I haven't seen this before, so if you can explain that just a little bit about what that is, and but I can tell everybody that what I was actually doing right here is I was actually putting together like a collage right here of classmates. These right here are supposed to be classmates, the ones that I was in class with during the time. Like everybody might say, is toward it, each time you think about this and you're wondering to where that, yeah, that, whenever you were working on this, that you actually were thinking about, okay, what do you think they would look like for sure if it was a logo or a bumper sticker or something like that? But these right here are supposed to be examples of classmates right here. And so that's why it seems like every time I think about that, and want to know too that this right here was an actual poster board design right here. Talk about your research right here, and want to know that, okay, yeah, your research. And so it's like, yeah, so this right here is supposed to be, yeah, like wallpaper design right here. And let's just say if I go ahead and move on to a different topic right here and open up, go ahead, and if I were to go to another tool right here, and so it's like, yeah, so you have these different tools right here. You got the paint bucket right here, and it's like, yeah, so you see these tools right here, and then you see these other options here too. You got the paint brushes right here, and then you also have right here these the clone sources right here. So these right here will give you different options to where you can change, like, yeah, the different types, and your clipping, and I was like, yeah, the lock frame, and but I also want to show everybody here about talking about the layers right here, because I know with the layers right here, the layers panel right here, if we can all see this right here, I think this right here is the most important part about Photoshop right here, besides the paint tool, that not just about editing the image, but then also using the layers in the channels panel right here, because we all know that duplicating and masking a photograph is a real powerful tool, by the way. Like everybody might say, is toward, okay, yeah, that you don't really pay attention to all those details right there. But I think a lot of professionals would say is to where you should pay attention to those details about the layers, because the layers give you that ability to what you see here. You may see that this right here may look like a poster board design right here of a few people with a few letterings right there, but without this menu right here, that yeah, so right here, so if I were to click the eyeball tool right here, and like everybody says, to where if I were to click that right there, and then that goes off right there to where you can't see that, and so if I were to switch these off right here, then you would see that right there, and then those, they become invisible, right? Since I turned them off. But then if I were to turn those back on, then you will be able to see that right there. So I just really think in a lot of ways, like everybody says, to where that whenever you do think about Photoshop, though, what you basically are doing is toward, you're building like a little, it's like a canvas right here, but still, that, it's not, like everybody might say that a lot of things that you see right here to where a lot of your audiences that didn't see from before. So it may seem like, from what I was talking about from earlier, this right here may seem like an actual an infographic or a backdrop right here of a few, of a few cartoon characters right here with a world map right here in your research. But then this right here is actually the selections right here of the layers and all that. So I just really think, like everybody says, toward it, to pay attention to that. But you have right here, create new layer, and then a group in the layers and everything. So so each time you think about Photoshop, that you think about photos, right? But if it was like everybody says, to where that if Photoshop was known for layers to the point to where why don't they call it layer frame shop or something? But like everybody says, well, photos. With Photoshop, that there's a reason why that they call it, for Photoshop, right? But still, that whenever you think about photos, though, that you're doing, you're actually improving, you're doing further editing and modifying, to a photograph, and so that is why it seems like that every time you do think about Photoshop, you're thinking as toward, that with these tools right here, that you have access to these tools and everything, but you don't pay attention to all these other details right here. So a lot of professionals would say is toward it, please take time to understand your tools very well. So that way, anybody who wants to know more information about that. And so it's like, so each time you think about that and want to know too is toward it, even if it is 5 years later, or 5 years ago, is toward not everybody has seen some of the stuff here, or maybe that if they have it, they don't know anything about it. And but the way I think about too, though, that when we do speak about graphic design or any sorts of design, that my thinking is toward, while you're sketching this right here, that you actually were trying to give it an approach to where if you're actually, you're in a classroom where you're working with 3 other students right here, and you were actually talking to them, and it says to where if you want to impress the world, then you can go ahead and develop a trusted relationship by your research, and so it's like, whenever you do talk to your classmates, by the way, that you were talking about, that a lot of things that you thought were kind of, they were make-believe before they became a reality, right? So every time I think about that, and 102, whenever it comes to understanding about, like, I'll go and paint right here. Got the eyelashes right here. But everybody says toward it, that, every time you think about that, and 102, that, you don't really talk to very many of your classmates too much at a time, but it was like, first of all, it was like whenever you were talking to your classmates during the time, it was like, almost all the time, they were telling you that, well, you didn't do this right, or, I would like to see a little bit more improvement with this, or, so it's like, a lot of my teachers, by the way, were kind of telling me that whenever I was in school during the time, that they were telling me that, I would like to see you do this, and I would like to see you work on that, and so every time I would show work on the design right here, it was like, so every time I was working on something, it sure seems that way, that like everybody might say, is toward, you would maybe think that that this right here should only take you 5 minutes to be able to work on this, and maybe just to be able to do any further editing or revision or anything like that. But it's like every time you think about that, and you're warned toward it. Come on. And so yeah, every time I do think about that, and I'm warned toward that, you really only want to spend maybe only 5 or 10 minutes working on it, right? And like everybody might even say that, if you cannot move on to other topics for a project, and then that's going to make you late, from getting to other topics that you were going to discuss, right? So that's why it seems like that the whole purpose about being a designer for sure would be is to where that that and more, right? Whenever it comes to design, that Photoshop doesn't just allow you to where you can look real closely at a photograph, but then also you have these selections right here of the menus right here. You have right here the layers with these layers, and you got the channel right here, and so I can show everybody here this up close right here. But this right here, yeah, RGB, and then you got the red and green and blue channel right here. But if you see this right here, yeah. So if I select that work in the path right here, the 3D menu, right? So yeah, so you have these layers right here, and yeah, up here, and then you got the type tool, the type right here, where it says where you can, the filter for the type layers. So you got the filter right here, and so it's like, yeah, so each time you think about Photoshop, though, that you might be thinking that is toward, okay, yeah, that, yeah, Photoshop is just another way of how you want to call, yeah, you shop for the special effects, or maybe if anything, yeah, you can add the special typography, or something, the typography or something like that, and so each time you think about that, and you're warned toward it, yeah, that whenever you were first introduced to the Photoshop, for sure, that the first thing that you thought about was that yeah, photographs, or if anything, that you want to know if it was installed on your system, and but still, but I know with me though that I was actually sketching these. If these right here were supposed to be classmates, but like everybody might say, is toward, yeah, classmates. But by the time you do meet, yeah, by the time you actually see, your classmates, like, yeah, like everybody might say, is toward, by the time you do meet somebody in person for sure. And then it's like, yeah, they're going to start asking you about something that you were working on, if it's been, 5 years ago since you were working on that. And, so every time I think about that, and I'm more too that, yeah, that for sure, you're warned to where yeah, that was a long time ago. What about it? So every time I think about that, and you're warned too that yeah, it's been 5 years since you were working on that, but everybody might say that really, what is your point? Every time you say that, by the way, it's like, really, what's your point? Even if it has been 5 years since you were working on this, that does not mean that nobody really wants to see it, or not everybody wants to hear it, right? And so that's why it seems like, that's going to probably be my first approach, is toward it, that was 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago, and people might say that, yeah, okay, is your point to where you can't remember very well, what was going on during the time? Like, no, I remember very well, but it's like, yeah, so every time you think about that, and like everybody might even say that, yeah, I'll go and use a little lighter color right here so we can see, but it's like, yeah, every time I think about this right here, and I want to know too that, yeah, that whenever you do think about that, you go ahead and paint right here these images right here, and like, yeah, that right there, that looks a little bit more like you if you were going to be, yeah, in the classroom right there with a few of your classmates right there. And want to know too is to where, okay, yeah, that, based on your research, that I think that you can impress a few of your classmates right there just by, knowing as to where that, you just go ahead and show them what you're working on. And another thing that I know I mentioned too is to where that, are you using your left hand right here or your right hand just to be able to work with the tools and selections and all that? But so yeah, so I thought that everybody would maybe like to look at this right here. That this right here is a sketch right here that I was working on, and I found this, and everybody might say is to where if anybody was able to see that right there. I don't think everybody saw this right here. This was 5 years ago whenever I was working on this, and I was putting this together right here, and people might say is to where that right there is, but I'm like, yeah, which I think it's up on my portfolio, by the way, but still that it's all my portfolio, by the way, but I tell you one thing that not everybody's really going to understand what you were working on until you're able to explain. But like everybody might say that, what does it mean to explain something? If you're trying to explain to somebody about something, what exactly is it that you're trying to say? But I'm like, what you're trying to say is that, you're trying to explain in a way to make it easier for them to understand about, something that I'm like, So every time you think about that in your word to where that, every time, talk about for explain right here. And I'll just go ahead and type right here, talk about for explain. So every time you think about that, and like everybody might say that, really, what does it mean to explain something? And especially, like everybody says, to where, whenever you explain something to somebody, for sure, you're going into further detail, right? You're going into further detail about something, and maybe that's another reason why that somebody would suggest, to you to go ahead and do a logo. You do a logo or an infographic explaining what you put together, and maybe write a letter about what you were talking about from earlier. So it's like each time you think about that in your word to word, how come I wasn't thinking about that from before? But still, 5 years ago and 5 years later, right here. So this right here, this right here is supposed to be people right here, students that I was going to school with, right? But it's like, based on your research right here. So whenever you do think about that in your word, your research right here. So whenever you think about that in your word, where, your research. What about my research? Research. Research basically means is that something that you were working on from earlier that really became interesting to somebody, who approached your ideas, and they were able to read up about anything that you were working on, right? And so that's why it seems like that whenever you do think about that in your word, where the first thing that you think about, number one, is about 5 years ago or so that you were working on this, but why did it take 5 years just before you start asking the questions and all that? But still. But on the other hand, that I thought everybody here would like to see this right here, top up understand about basics about Photoshop right here. But you have right here these selection tools right here, and I'll just show everybody here these right here. They got the pen tool, the anchor tool, and then you got paint bucket right here. Okay, the 3D material dropping tool right here. And you got right here is the eraser tool, and then the clone stamp tool right here, the eyedropper tool. So you got a variety. You have access to at least 25, even 30, up to 30 tools right here. So that's why it seems like that when we do talk about the tools and layers, whenever it comes to Photoshop, though, and your 102 is that if you could figure out a lot of how the tools work for sure, but still, it's like, your 102 is toward it, just because you take a photo from your phone or from an actual camera, and it's like, yeah, that there's more to do to with your photos than just the regular you capture in developing the photographs. And so the way I think about it too, though, that like, yeah, something that was that you were working on 5 years ago, and 5 years later, but still, everybody might say is to where, yeah, to develop a trusted relationship right here. But I thought we would all like to see that right there. But the way I think about it, though, is that when we're talking about puzzle pieces, like you talk about the world map right here, but it's like, yeah, so it's like so whenever I do think about that, by the way, it's like 102 is that you talking to a few of your classmates, by the way, and somebody's gonna maybe say for sure is to where, yeah, that's not what I look like. Or, yeah, can you go ahead and, yeah, so it's like, so everybody might even want to know, too, that if you're going to be working on any sketches for sure, that, yeah, I did this work freehanded, by the way, so it's like, if you were to be talking to anybody for sure, and want to know that, if you want to show them any examples of your artwork, by the way, that you're going to say is to her, yeah, I did this freehand. In case if you didn't know that, I'm an artist, by the way, and I was able to do this. I was able to draw this freehand. I was able to do this freehanded here. And freehand meaning that no tracing, it's drawing. And so yeah, a lot of times, being an artist, by the way, that I actually would draw the details right here of the people right here by looking at pictures. But then whenever I had gotten a good, whenever I was able to get a few of the graphing pencils and sketch pencils, that I was able to work with a lot of the drawings right here, sketch out a lot of the images right here, and that's how I was able to scan them and import them into Photoshop, so that way I can draw out more details right here. So it was like, yeah, so whenever you think about that, and you're 102, that, yeah, that, this right here, yeah, go ahead and paint a little bit right there. People might say, yeah, that right there is supposed to be, example, that's a student right there, but like tell people that, yeah, you go ahead and give them, a look right here. Yeah, you go ahead and paint in the details right there of like a little ponytail right there in the back. A few students, by the way, would say that, yeah, a pink, make it pink, make it pink, a pink ponytail right there. Yeah, it's like you want to go ahead and paint a few students right there. Go ahead and paint a picture of with their hair braided in the back. And a lot of students, by the way, they would approach a lot of their students' ideas right there. Go on and paint a picture of me right there with my hair braided in the back like that. So yeah, so it's like, yeah, a lot of students, by the way, would want to know too that, yeah, if you're going to paint my picture, by the way, could you paint me a picture with a good hairstyle? Good hairstyle, and give me a good style that represents, for what I would look like. So it's like, so whenever you do think about that, and like everybody says to where that, if you're going to be an artist, by the way, that, is anybody really going to ask you to go ahead and paint a picture of them with their hair braided in the back or something like that, or that, yeah, that this is what I would look like, if I were a cartoon or something like that. But still, yeah, anything else that somebody's gonna maybe tell you, but still, it's like, I'll go in and paint right here, yeah, the ponytail right there. But anyway, yeah, so I'm just painting in right there the details right there, but it's like, yeah, so that right there, like everybody might say that, yeah, give the person maybe some piggy tails or something. I'm like, I really don't know. I'm like, everybody might say is to where if you go ahead and, if you want to go ahead and paint some pigtails right here. People might say that, if you got enough room right there, you can go and paint it, that right there. If that right there is supposed to be a little girl right there in pigtails or something. But still, give them a good, cute looking hairdo right there. But it's like, yeah, so whenever you do think about that, and want to know too that, yeah, if you're going to go ahead and draw a picture portrait of somebody from your class, that, a lot of those students, by the way, would say is to her, okay, yeah, that, I want to see you do that. I don't want to just look at the picture, but I want to see you, how you do that. Can you please show me how you do that? And for whatever reason, a lot of everybody else, they're going to be asking me that. To where I actually, I want to watch you do I want to watch you work. I don't want to just see the drawing, but I actually want to see you, I actually want to watch you do the work right there. And so a lot of my audiences would probably ask me that if you can go ahead and show me some examples of how you do some of your work right here. And so this right here, yeah. So I'll go ahead and paint right there. And, is an example right there of like what the student right there. But it's like everybody might say that yeah, that if you want to impress the world, for sure. But still, it's like so whenever you do think about that, and you're warned to where that you find something that you were working on maybe a few years ago, and somebody's maybe 102 that yeah, okay, yeah, you find that, and you were working on that 5 years ago, but then not everybody is really going to understand what that is until you're able to explain to them what you were doing. And so that's why it's like, yeah, so it's like so yeah, so it's like so whenever I was working on this, by the way, I'll tell everybody that back in 2016, of course, before I entered the college year, that I was telling everybody that this is what I thought that most of the classmates would look like, and especially with the online virtual learning and everything. That this is what if you want to go ahead and sketch out any portraits in the 102, that's where, yeah, do you think that if you want to know what a few of your students look like and everything, you go and just draw out the details right there. But it's like, yeah, so that's really what I was working on mainly, was that if you want to impress the world, that you go ahead and yeah, that a relationship, right? But then also that while you were working on something, that yeah, you found out maybe an hour later that somebody else was looking at what you were doing, and want to know too that yeah, while you were working on something, yeah, even while you're like, yeah, any artist, by the way, might even say that while you were sleeping, by the way, that there was somebody else, like, yeah, while you were sleeping, that there's been some changes going on with your work. Like everybody say that, especially with the digital art programs now, that while you were working on something, but yeah, while you were asleep, that there's been some improvements with your artwork. So it's like every time you think about that, and 102, that do most artists think is to where that, okay, yeah, your artwork, that you weren't asleep while you were working on this, but let's just say that it looks quite different from the last time that you saw it. And so it's like, yeah, so it's like so everybody might say that while you were you're an artist while you were working on this, and let's just say if it does look a lot different from the last time you remember working on it, and like everybody might say is to where that's another way of how you want to call whenever your work gets promoted, right? Whenever it gets promoted, that somebody might say that I actually would like to use this for an example, yeah, for like maybe the hobby, for a hobby room or something like that, or a recreational center, or maybe for a restaurant. So in case of anybody may say is toward, yeah, that I saw this right here, and I came across one of your designs right here, and so that's why it seems like yeah, you might even say too that whenever I was working on this, I actually was trying to use it as a screensaver. I was going to use it for my wallpaper design for a screensaver for on a website. Actually, I was going to use it as a screensaver, but like everybody might say, is to where that if you're going to use it as a screensaver, which that's fine, but tell everybody, yeah, if you want to go ahead and change the pixelization just a little, but still, it's like but whenever you do think about that, and you're learn to where that a few of these right, these are supposed to be your classmates right here, right, and you're learn to where you go back to that work nearly 5 years. 5 years later, and you're learn to where so it's like the first thing that you want to know too is to where you explain what took so long. So it's like so like everybody might say is to where well, what took so long? So I'll tell everybody here that being a designer, by the way, that what took so long? Being a designer, by the way, like everybody might say, is that if you're going to be working on something for sure, you put a question mark right there. So it's like anything that you're going to be working on for sure, that somebody's going to say that while you were working on something that seems like usually sometimes it takes a couple of hours to be able to get something, or sometimes it may only take maybe 5 minutes just to be able to do something. And so like everybody might say that do you remember at all? How did you do that the last time? So it's like so being a graphic designer, by the way, everybody would say is toward that being a graphic artist, by the way, that somebody might even say that how did you do this last time? Well, like everybody says toward it, maybe not every time. Based on my experience, not every time maybe is going to be the same experience and compared to the next time. So it's like, so every time you do want to think about that and want to know too, that really, what can you really do just to be able to make it easier for somebody else to understand you, to be able to improve the source of technology. And one thing that we can keep in mind though is that just knowing is to where that somebody that you were working with for sure, somebody that you were working with that knows your work very well, right? But anyway, so they said for what took so long right here. But anyway, I thought I'd go and talk about it there, but still, it's like your research right here. So if we all think about that, then we'll know too, based on your research, right? But anyway, 5 years ago and 5 years later. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.